Elena Vasquez smoothed her navy blue diplomatic uniform one last time before stepping into the gleaming transport pod. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the crystalline doors sealed shut, and she caught her reflection in the polished surface. At 28, she was the youngest envoy Earth had ever sent to the Zephyrian Empire, and today would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community or faced annihilation. The transport glided silently through the massive docking bay of the Imperial flagship Stellar Majesty. Through the transparent walls, Elena marveled at the ship's impossible architecture, flowing curves that seemed to defy physics, surfaces that shifted between solid metal and translucent crystal, and gravity that worked in spirals rather than straight lines. Everything about Zephyrian technology felt alive, organic, beautiful in ways that made human engineering seem crude by comparison. "First time seeing their ships up close?" asked her aide, Jeremy Walsh, a nervous man in his 50s who kept adjusting his glasses. "First time seeing anything like this," Elena whispered, watching as maintenance workers with 6 arms and skin like polished copper moved with fluid grace between the vessels. Some rode floating platforms while others simply walked up the walls as if gravity were optional. The transport came to a gentle stop at an airlock decorated with symbols that hurt to look at directly. As they disembarked, Elena's translator earpiece crackled to life, converting the melodic alien announcements into crisp English. "Welcome, honored guests from the third planet. His Imperial Majesty Prince Kelthar awaits your presence in the Aurora Chamber." Elena's breath caught. She'd expected to meet with some minor official, not the Crown Prince himself. According to her briefings, Prince Kelthar was considered the most eligible bachelor in the galaxy, brilliant, powerful, and devastatingly handsome by the standards of a dozen different species. More importantly, he was the heir to an empire that spanned 300 star systems. Their escort was a tall, graceful being with silver skin and eyes like liquid starlight. "I am Attendant Valtara," she said in a voice like wind chimes. "Please follow the illuminated path. Do not touch the walls, they are alive and somewhat temperamental with new species." As they walked through corridors that pulsed with soft bioluminescence, Elena tried to calm her nerves by reviewing her mission parameters. Earth needed the Zephyrians' protection from the aggressive Thanirian collective, who had been enslaving or destroying every human colony they encountered. The price for that protection was steep exclusive mining rights to half of Earth's rare elements, and a binding alliance that would essentially make humanity a vassal state. But Elena had other plans. She'd spent months learning everything she could about Zephyrian culture, their language, their customs, their poetry. If she could convince them that humans were worth treating as equals rather than subjects, it might change everything. The Aurora Chamber took Elena's breath away. The vast space was filled with floating platforms arranged in a gentle spiral, each one surrounded by clouds of glowing particles that moved like living things. At the center, on a platform that seemed to be made of crystallized music, stood Prince Kale Thar. Elena had seen holographic images of him, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. He was tall and lean, with skin that shifted between deep blue and silver, depending on the light. His eyes were the color of nebulae, and his dark hair moved as if he were underwater. 6 arms moved with unconscious grace, each gesture a small work of art. He wore robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself, covered in patterns that showed distant galaxies. But it was his smile that made Elena's heart skip. It was warm, genuine, and somehow familiar, as if they'd met before in dreams. "Elena Vasquez of Earth," he said, his voice carrying easily across the chamber without any apparent amplification. "I have been eager to meet you. Your reputation for diplomatic innovation precedes you." Elena bowed in the Zephyrian fashion, touching her heart, lips, and forehead. "Your Highness, the honor is mine. I bring greetings from the people of Earth and hope for our future together." "Please, join me," Kelthar said, gesturing to a platform that floated toward her. "I understand you've taken the trouble to learn our customs. Few diplomats make such an effort." As Elena stepped onto the platform, she felt the strange sensation of artificial gravity adjusting to her biology. The platform carried her smoothly to where the prince waited, and she found herself close enough to see the complex patterns of light that moved beneath his skin. I believe understanding leads to respect, Elena said. Accepting the cup of something that tasted like liquid starlight. And respect is the foundation of any lasting alliance. Kelthur's nebula-colored eyes brightened. Fascinating. Most species that come before us speak only of what they need, what they fear, what they can offer. You speak of respect, perhaps because I see you as more than just a means to an end, Elena replied. Surprised by her own boldness, your people have built something beautiful here. Your art, your music, your poetry, I've studied it all. You've achieved what my species still struggles toward. And what is that? Harmony, balance, the ability to create rather than just consume. The prince was quiet for a long moment, his forearms moving in what Elena recognized as a gesture of deep thought. Round them, the glowing particles shifted colors, responding to his emotional state. You surprise me, Elena Vasquez, he said finally. In 300 years of diplomacy, no one has ever commented on our poetry. Then they've missed the most important part of who you are, Elena said softly. The lament of the void dancer moved me to tears. The symphony of distant suns gave me hope during our darkest hour. Your people don't just rule, you inspire. Something shifted in Kelthur's expression, a vulnerability that made him seem suddenly, surprisingly human. You read the lament, but that's considered too complex for most species to understand. I may not have grasped all the nuances, Elena admitted, but I understood the core emotion, the loneliness of being different, of carrying responsibilities that others can't comprehend, the longing for connection across the void. The prince's skin shifted to a deeper blue, and Elena's translator whispered that this indicated strong emotion. You did understand it, he said quietly, perhaps better than I realized possible. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, and Elena felt something pass between them, a recognition, a possibility. A spark of something that could grow into something magnificent or dangerous. Your Highness, Jeremy interrupted nervously. Perhaps we should discuss the treaty terms, Elena blinked, remembering suddenly where she was and why she'd come. But as she looked into Kelthur's eyes, she realized that the most important negotiation might not be about mining rights or military protection. It might be about something far more precious and infinitely more complicated. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. Let's discuss the future. But as they began to talk about star charts and trade routes, Elena found herself thinking about poetry and the way his skin caught the light, and she wondered if she was about to change the course of two civilizations in ways no one could have predicted. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and full of wonders. But in that moment, in that chamber filled with living light, Elena Vasquez discovered that the greatest wonder of all might be the possibility of love across the impossible distances between worlds. Prince Kelthur stood alone in his private observatory, 6 arms moving in agitated patterns as he watched Earth's small blue star through the viewing portal. 3 days had passed since his meeting with Elena Vasquez, and he hadn't been able to concentrate on anything else. The formal treaty negotiations were proceeding smoothly, perhaps, but his mind kept returning to the way she'd spoken about Zephyrian poetry, the genuine emotion in her voice when she'd quoted the lament of the void dancer. Your Highness seems troubled, came a melodic voice from behind him. Kelthur turned to see his closest friend and advisor, Nixandra, approaching with her characteristic grace. Her skin was a pale lavender that darkened to deep purple at the edges, and her fair eyes held the wisdom of someone who had lived for 8 centuries. I am contemplating the human proposal, Kelthur said, which was technically true. The proposal, or the human who delivered it. Nixandra's tone was gentle but knowing. The entire court is talking about how long you spent with their envoy yesterday. 4 hours is unprecedented for a first diplomatic meeting. Kelthur's skin shifted to a deeper blue, betraying his emotional state. She is remarkable. When was the last time someone spoke to me about our art rather than our military might? When has anyone cared enough to truly understand what we've created? Never, Nixandra admitted, settling onto a floating cushion beside him. But surely you realize the complications this presents. The Council of Nobles is already suspicious of any alliance with such a young species. If they suspected romantic involvement, I know, Kelthur interrupted, his voice heavy with frustration. My duty is to the Empire first, always. But Nixandra, what if duty and desire don't have to be enemies? What if caring for her could make me a better ruler? Before his advisor could respond, the chamber's communication crystal began to glow. Your Highness, came the voice of the ship's protocol officer. The human envoy has requested another meeting. She wishes to discuss cultural exchange programs. Kelther's heart saw 3 of them began beating faster. Schedule it for this evening. The Harmony Gardens. The gardens, Nixandra raised an eyebrow. That's rather intimate for a diplomatic meeting. Cultural exchange requires a cultural setting. Kelther replied, but his skin was already shifting to the warm golden hue that indicated anticipation. Evening on a Zephyrian ship was a carefully orchestrated symphony of light and sound. The Harmony Gardens were a vast biodome where plants from 100 worlds grew in impossible combinations, their bioluminescence creating patterns that shifted with the ship's emotional atmosphere. Tonight, the gardens glowed with soft amber and rose, reflecting the prince's anticipation. Ellen arrived wearing a simple green dress that complemented her dark hair and warm brown eyes. She moved with quiet confidence through the alien landscape, stopping occasionally to examine a particularly beautiful flower or to listen to the melodic humming of the crystal trees. You chose well, she said as Kelther approached. This is breathtaking. I thought you might appreciate it, he replied, offering her his primary arm in the traditional Zephyrian gesture of escort. Each plant here tells a story of worlds we've visited, species we've encountered. It's a living library of our exploration. As they walked deeper into the gardens, Elena paused beside a cluster of flowers that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. These are from your home world, aren't they? I recognize them from the painting in your throne room. Astral lilies, Kelther confirmed, surprised once again by her attention to detail. They bloom only once every 7 years, and only when both moons are full. My grandmother planted these herself before she died. They're beautiful, Elena said softly, and something in her tone made him look at her more carefully. On Earth, we have a saying, beauty is the bridge between souls. I think your grandmother would have understood that. They settled on a bench, carved from living crystal, its surface warm to the touch, around them. The garden's bioluminescence shifted to deeper, more intimate colors. Elena, Kelther said, his voice quieter than usual, I must confess something. Yesterday's meeting, it wasn't entirely about diplomacy for me. She turned to face him, and he could see his own feelings reflected in her eyes. For me either. She admitted, I've spent my entire career learning to read people, to understand their motivations. But with you, it's different. It's not about strategy or advantage. It's about connection. This is dangerous territory, Kelther said, though he made no move to pull away from her. If the council knew that the crown prince was developing feelings for an alien diplomat, would it really be so terrible? Elena asked, her hand finding his. Your people and mine aren't so different. We both love beauty. We both seek understanding. We both dream of something greater than ourselves. But we are different, Kelther replied, his skin shifting to a conflicted pattern of blue and gold. My people live for millennia. We have different customs, different biology, different ways of seeing the universe, and I am not free to choose my own path. No one is entirely free, Elena said gently. But we can choose how we respond to our circumstances. We can choose to let fear rule us, or we can choose to be brave. The prince's for secondary arms moved in a complex pattern that Elena recognized as the gesture for impossible beauty, something so wonderful it almost hurt to witness. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is, Elena said, leaning closer. Maybe we complicate things because we're afraid of what simplicity might cost us for a moment. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the garden's lights dance around them. Then Kelther spoke again, his voice heavy with emotion. There's something you should know about the treaty your people are requesting. The council doesn't see humans as potential equals. They see you as a young species that needs guidance, permanent guidance. The protection we're offering comes with strings. That would make your world a client state for the next 1,000 years. Elena's grip on his hand tightened. I suspected as much. That's why I've been trying to change the conversation, to make this about more than just military protection. And you're succeeding, Kelther said, turning to face her fully. More than you know. But Elena, if I push too hard for better terms, if I advocate too strongly for human independence, the Council will start asking questions about my motivations. Then we'll have to be careful, Elena said, her diplomat's mind already working. We'll have to find a way to make them see the value of treating Earth as a true ally, rather than a subordinate. We. Kelther's skin brightened to a warm gold. We. Elena confirmed, if you'll have me as a partner in this impossible endeavor. The prince's response was to lean closer, his forehead touching hers in the Zephyrian gesture of deep affection. I would be honored, he whispered Dot as they held each other in the garden's gentle glow. Both of them knew they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. But sometimes, Elena thought, the most important revolutions began with the smallest acts of courage. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the drama unfolding below. But in the harmony gardens of a Zephyrian flagship, two hearts from different worlds had found each other across the void, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles, new reasons why their growing love was impossible. But tonight, in this place of living light and alien beauty, Elena Vasquez and Prince Kelther allowed themselves to believe that love might be stronger than politics, deeper than duty, and more enduring than the very stars themselves. The first seeds of revolution had been planted not in battlefields or council chambers, but in the quiet moments between two people who dared to see beyond the boundaries of their worlds. Marcus Stone crouched in the shadows of the abandoned mining station on Kepler 4-4b, watching the stars through a crack in the reinforced hull. Somewhere out there, Elena Vasquez was negotiating humanity's future with aliens who saw his species as little more than promising pets. The thought made his jaw clench as he turned back to the holographic display, showing the locations of every human colony ship scattered across 3 sectors. The supply run to New Geneva was intercepted, reported his lieutenant, Tomas Rivera, a former Earth Navy pilot whose ship had been one of the few to escape. When the Thanirian collective destroyed the colony at Ross 128, 23 families lost, including the children. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, adding 23 more names to the list of people he'd failed to protect. At 35, he'd been fighting this shadow war for 8 years, ever since the aliens had first made contact and humanity had scattered to the stars seeking safety that never came. How many ships do we have ready? Marcus asked, studying the tactical display that showed human settlements spread thin across hostile space. 47 combat-capable vessels, answered Vera Nakamura, his chief engineer, and the only person who truly understood the hybrid technology they'd cobbled together from salvaged alien components. But Marcus, we can't keep this up. We're losing people faster than we can evacuate them. Which is why we need to make our move now, Marcus said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had made desperate colonists follow him into battles they couldn't win. Before our diplomat signs away our freedom in exchange for protection we don't actually need. The truth was more complicated than that, and everyone in the room knew it. Elena Vasquez wasn't the enemy. She was trying to save humanity the only way she knew how. But Marcus had seen what happened to species that accepted the Zephyrian Empire's protection. They became clients, then vassals, then footnotes in galactic history. The reconnaissance data from the Zephyrian flagship came through, Vera said, pulling up a new set of schematics. Their security is impressive, but there's something strange about their defensive patterns. It's almost like they're deliberately leaving gaps. Marcus leaned forward, studying the layouts with the eye of someone who'd spent years learning to exploit weaknesses in superior technology. What kind of gaps? Here, Vera pointed to a section of the ship's hull. This maintenance shaft connects to the environmental systems, but it's only lightly monitored. And here the power grid has redundancies that create blind spots in their sensor networks. Could be a trap, Tomas suggested, his pilot's paranoia keeping him alive through dozens of impossible escapes. Or it could be help, Marcus said thoughtfully. What do we know about internal politics on that ship? Vera consulted her tablet. According to our intelligence network, there's tension between the prince and the noble council. Some of the crew have been expressing doubts about traditional policies toward younger species. Marcus felt a spark of possibility. What if some of them want things to change? What if Prince Kelthar isn't as committed to the old ways as his ancestors? You're thinking of approaching him directly, Tomas asked, incredulous. Marcus, that's suicide. Even if he's sympathetic, he's still the heir to an empire that's conquered half the galaxy. Sometimes the biggest risks offer the biggest rewards, Marcus replied, but his mind was already working through the implications. If Elena was building a connection with the prince, if there was genuine affection there, it might create an opportunity for something unprecedented. A new voice interrupted their planning. Commander Stone, we have an incoming transmission from one of our deep cover assets on the flagship. The holographic display shifted to show a communication channel, marked with multiple encryption layers. When the signal cleared, it revealed a young woman with short auburn hair and intelligent green eyes. Marcus, it's me, said Jade Patterson, one of the human engineers who'd volunteered to infiltrate the Zephyrian vessel. By posing as a technical specialist, I'm sending this from a secure terminal in the engine room. You need to know what I've discovered. Go ahead, Jade. Are you safe for now? But Marcus, everything we thought we knew about this negotiation is wrong. Elena isn't just building diplomatic relations with the prince, they're falling in love. And it's causing a political crisis that could either save us or destroy us both. Marcus felt his world shift. Love between species was rare, but not unknown in the galaxy. But love between a human diplomat and the Zephyrian crown prince was a complication no one had anticipated. What kind of crisis? He asked. The Noble Council is split. Half of them see Elena as a potential threat to Zephyrian purity. The other half think she might be useful for controlling human colonies through emotional manipulation. But the Prince, Marcus, I think he genuinely cares about what happens to our people. Vera leaned forward. Can we trust him? I don't know. Jade replied honestly, but I know we can't trust the Council. They're planning something called the Benevolent Integration Protocol. It sounds nice, but from what I've overheard, it involves relocating human populations to educational centers where they can be properly civilized. Concentration camps, Tomas said grimly. Essentially, yes, Marcus. If Elena signs that treaty without understanding what she's really agreeing to, she won't. Marcus said firmly, Elena's too smart to be fooled by pretty words, but she might agree to it if she thinks it's the only way to prevent a war we can't win. So what do we do? Vera asked. Marcus studied the tactical displays, the ship schematics, the scattered positions of human colonies across 3 sectors. An idea was forming. Dangerous and audacious, but potentially brilliant. We're going to do something unprecedented. He said finally, we're going to trust a prince, save a diplomat, and start a revolution. But first, we need to get aboard that ship. The gaps in their security, Vera said. Understanding immediately, you think someone's helping us. I think someone on that ship believes in love more than politics, Marcus replied. And I think it's time we found out who, over the next several hours. Marcus assembled his most trusted team for what might be either the most important mission in human history or their final desperate gamble. The plan was elegantly simple. Infiltrate the Zephyrian flagship during the next diplomatic session. Make contact with Elena and any sympathetic aliens they could find, and expose the truth about the Benevolent Integration Protocol before it could be implemented. This is insane, Tomas said as they prepared the stealth ship for launch. We're talking about 12 people against a crew of thousands. Revolutions have started with less, Marcus replied, checking his equipment one final time. Besides, we're not trying to conquer them, we're trying to wake them up. As their ship approached the Zephyrian flagship under the cover of a maintenance convoy, Marcus found himself thinking about Elena Vasquez. He'd never met her personally, but he'd studied her diplomatic career, her writings on interspecies relations, her passionate advocacy for human rights in an indifferent universe. Marcus, Vera said softly, what if this doesn't work? What if love isn't enough to change an empire? Marcus looked out at the massive alien vessel growing larger on their screens, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with patterns that spoke of power, beauty, and ancient traditions. Then we'll have tried, he said simply. And sometimes trying is enough to inspire others to keep fighting. As their ship docked with the Zephyrian vessel, Marcus Stone prepared to gamble everything on the radical notion that to hearts from different worlds might be stronger than the weight of galactic politics. The rebellion was no longer just about human independence, it was about proving that love could transcend species, that connection could triumph over conquest, and that the future might belong to those brave enough to dream beyond the boundaries of their birth. The game was about to change, and Marcus Stone intended to make sure humanity had a voice in writing the new rules. Arya Moonwhisper pressed herself against the curved wall of the ventilation shaft, her naturally chameleon-like skin shifting to match the biometallic surface perfectly. Through the grating below, she could see Elena Vasquez and Prince Kelthar walking through the ship's arboretum, their voices carrying softly in the recycled air. For 3 weeks, Arya had been watching them, documenting their meetings, recording their conversations for her handlers in the Zephyrian Intelligence Division. But tonight, everything felt different. Arya belonged to a subspecies of Zephyrians, called the Veil Touch beings, born with natural camouflage abilities that made them perfect for espionage work. Her skin could shift between silver, blue, and deep purple, while her eyes changed color based on her emotional state. Most of her kind served the Empire willingly, seeing their surveillance duties as a form of patriotic service. Most of her kind had never spent weeks listening to people fall genuinely, helplessly in love. The council meeting is tomorrow, Elena was saying, her hand intertwined with one of Kelthar's secondary arms. Are you certain they'll approve the cultural exchange program? I've been building support carefully, the prince replied, his skin showing the warm gold patterns that Arya had learned meant contentment. Counselor Vexthara believes that understanding human creativity could benefit our artistic traditions. Counselor Indel thinks your scientific approach to emotion could revolutionize our psychological studies. Arya shifted position slightly, her enhanced hearing picking up the subtle harmonics in their voices that indicated deep emotional bonding. Her mission parameters were clear: document any signs of compromise in the prince's judgment. Report immediately if the human appeared to be manipulating him for political advantage. But what she was witnessing wasn't manipulation. It was something far more dangerous to the established order: genuine affection that transcended species barriers. Kale, Elena said softly, using the intimate shortened form of his name that only close friends were permitted. What will happen if they discover how we really feel about each other? The prince's skin shifted to darker blues, indicating concern. The old guard would call it contamination. They would say I've been compromised by alien influence. There would be demands for my removal from the succession. And the new guard, some, might see it as an opportunity for true integration between our peoples. Others, he paused, his forearms moving in the gesture Arya recognized as deep uncertainty. Others might try to use our feelings as leverage. Above them, Arya felt her own skin shift involuntarily to troubled purples and grays. She thought of her handler, Senior Agent Quenter, and his orders to report any signs of contamination in the royal bloodline. She thought of the files she'd seen suggesting that certain council members were already planning contingencies if the prince proved unreliable. But she also thought of the past 3 weeks, watching Elena learn Zephyrian customs with genuine respect, seeing Kelthar discover human art and literature with the wonder of a child. She'd witnessed conversations about poetry and philosophy, debates about ethics and governance, quiet moments of simply enjoying each other's company across the vast differences between their species. It was beautiful, and if her reports led to its destruction, Arya wasn't sure she could live with herself. Her communication implant buzzed softly, indicating an incoming priority message. Arya activated it reluctantly. Agent Moonwhisper, came Quenter's cold mental voice. Status report required immediately. The council is convening an emergency session tonight. Nothing significant to report. Arya subvocalized back, the lie coming easier than she'd expected. The subjects continue routine diplomatic interactions. Negative. We have intelligence suggesting human insurgents may attempt to board this vessel. Your surveillance subjects may be compromised. Report to briefing chamber 7 immediately. Arya's blood went cold. If human rebels were planning something, Elena could be caught in the crossfire. Worse, if the council suspected that she was somehow involved. Acknowledged, Arya replied, then quickly made her way through the ship's hidden passages toward the intelligence sector. Briefing Chamber 7 was a sterile space lined with monitoring equipment and holographic displays. Senior Agent Quenter waited for her, his ancient features carved from what looked like living marble, his 8 arms moving in patterns of barely controlled agitation. Agent Moonwhisper, he said without preamble, we have detected unauthorized vessels approaching, under false registry codes. Preliminary scans suggest human origin and military modification. How many? Arya asked, her training overriding her personal concerns. Unknown. Their stealth capabilities are more advanced than anticipated. Quenter's skin shifted to suspicious yellows and oranges. This suggests either significant technological advancement or assistance from within our own forces. The implications hit Arya like a physical blow. You think someone aboard this ship is helping them. We think the human diplomat may be more. Then she appears, Quenter replied, activating a holographic display that showed Elena's complete psychological profile. Your reports have noted her exceptional understanding of our culture. Her rapid mastery of our customs, such adaptation, could indicate either remarkable natural ability or prior extensive contact with our people. Arya studied the display, seeing Elena's achievements laid out in cold clinical detail. But she also remembered the woman's genuine tears when she'd first heard Zephyrian morning songs, her careful questions about proper protocols, her obvious nervousness during the early diplomatic sessions. With respect, Senior Agent, I've observed no evidence of deception in the human's behavior. Quenter's eyes focused on her with uncomfortable intensity. No evidence, or no desire to see evidence. Agent Moonwhisper, your own psychological readings have been irregular. During this assignment, Arya felt her skin shift involuntarily to defensive patterns. I've maintained complete objectivity in my surveillance duties, have you? Quenter moved closer, his presence intimidating despite Arya's own considerable training. When did you last file a detailed emotional analysis of the subject's interactions? When did you last report on potential security implications of their growing intimacy? Their relationship appears to be genuine rather than strategic, Arya said carefully. I saw no immediate security concerns. Their relationship should not exist at all. Quenter snapped. The crown prince of the Zephyrian Empire does not form emotional attachments to alien diplomats. The fact that it has occurred suggests either corruption of his judgment or manipulation of his feelings. The briefing room door chimed, admitting 3 more intelligence operatives. Arya recognized them as enforcement specialist agents trained to handle problem situations. With extreme prejudice, Agent Moonwhisper, Quenter continued, you will guide these operatives to the human diplomat's quarters. You will observe as they conduct a detailed interrogation regarding her true mission and any accomplices she may have aboard this vessel. Arya's hearts, both of them, began racing. Sir, if I may suggest, arresting the human diplomat during active negotiations could create a significant diplomatic incident. The Council has already decided that the risk of allowing her to continue unchecked outweighs diplomatic concerns. Quenter replied coldly, if she is innocent, she will be released with appropriate apologies. If she is not, he didn't need to finish. Arya had seen what happened to suspected enemy agents in Zephyrian custody. Even the innocent ones rarely emerged unchanged. I understand, Arya said, her mind racing through possibilities. Should I continue surveillance of Prince Kelthar as well? The prince will be confined to his quarters pending the investigation. He is not to have contact with any humans until this matter is resolved. As they left the briefing chamber, Arya's skin was cycling through colors she couldn't control: fear, anger, determination, and something else she didn't want to examine too closely. She'd been trained to serve the Empire without question, to put duty above personal feelings, to see the greater good in even the harshest necessities. But as she led the enforcement team through the ship's corridors toward Elena's quarters, Arya found herself thinking about love poems and philosophical discussions, about the way Kelthar's skin glowed when Elena laughed, about the genuine wonder in the human woman's eyes when she experienced Zephyrian art. They were approaching Elena's door when Arya made her choice. "Wait," she said, stopping the team in a maintenance corridor. "I need to scan for security countermeasures first." As the enforcement specialists checked their equipment, Arya activated her personal communicator on a frequency she wasn't supposed to know, one that connected to the ship's environmental systems where a certain human engineer named Jade Patterson was supposedly working. "Emergency override in progress." She transmitted encoded human English she'd learned by monitoring Elena's conversations. "Package delivery imminent. Suggest alternative location." It was treason, pure and simple. But as Arya led the enforcement team toward what she hoped would be empty quarters, she decided that some things were worth betraying an empire for. Love, it turned out, was one of them.